Check the road.
Next, there's just another issue. Open issues there. Nigley.
Maria, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just bringing up the slides. So.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can see, but we've there's been an emergency call out, so we've lost a couple of members. So we've got Becky here and Logan and Mark Harris, chair, and I've got, you won't have met Logan before, who's our new member of the table.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Hi, Logan. Nice to meet you. All right, kia ora koutou. I am here to talk to you about containers on reserves. So we're talking about shipping containers. I'm going to give you a short overview of why we're bringing this work, what we've learnt, and the direction that we're proposing. Across the district, we've had a growing number of shipping containers on reserves. Most of them have started as temporary storage for clubs, events, or operational needs, but over time, many have stayed longer than intended, and more groups are asking for them. The issue that we're seeing is that containers, they can affect the look and feel of the reserves, take up recreation space, and in some cases, they become semi-permanent without clear authorisation. Some are well managed, others are unsightly or sit outside of a formal lease or licence. At the moment, we don't have a consistent district-wide approach. This means decisions vary by reserves and between groups. Staff spend a lot of time navigating the Reserves Act process on a case-by-case basis without clear policy direction. Can you all still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking into this now because we want to protect the amenity and recreational value of reserves, ensure fairness for all community groups by treating requests consistently, and move away from long-term resilience on containers because they're not good permanent solutions. We want to give clear guidance to both staff and clubs so expectations are transparent. Right now, some of the containers are authorised, some aren't, and many don't have time limits. So with an audit of our existing containers on our reserves in 2025, it's the right time now to set a clear framework. We have done extensive research looking at what's happening around the country. The themes are very consistent. Most councils do not encourage containers on reserves. Containers, they often start as short-term, but they become permanent by default. When they do allow them, there are usually strict conditions, screening, cladding, colour, time limits. Approvals are always nearly tied to leases or licences under the Reserves Act, and there is a clear shift towards shared storage solutions, rather than every club having their own separate storage area or container. This review has helped us understand the balance between supporting community groups and protecting reserve values. So what we're proposing and why. We're proposing a council policy supported by a clear internal procedure. So we'll have a containers on reserves policy, and underneath that will be the procedure. Key elements is that councils will generally be discouraged, but still possible where there is genuinely a need and where there are no practical alternative options such as shared facilities. They'll be time limited to a maximum of 2 years with no automatic renewals. Applicants would need to show that they have explored shared or integrated storage, so not just defaulted to a container. Any approved container would require a licence to occupy with clear conditions about design, colour, screening, location and maintenance. And there may be a fee as a part of the licence to occupy. Existing containers would be reviewed and transitioned over time, so effectively a sinking lid approach. And I guess for context, there are none in the Maniototo right now, but we do have, I think we're up to 7 in the district right now. Council-led operational containers will still be permitted, and I guess the idea here is that the approach gives us consistency, clarity and fairness while still giving community groups a workable pathway where storage is essential. So the idea of today is just to get some early feedback before we bring a final policy to the council for consideration in early 2026. You're the first board to hear this, and we'll hear from the other boards early next year. So we're looking for your thoughts on the proposed direction, anything we've missed, and how this will work on the ground in your ward. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, you said that there wasn't any in our Maniototo ward?
Not that I know of, but are you about to tell me there are?
Might be a couple.
Yeah, they tend to sneak in there. This is the problem.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, none that we know of.
Because you've got a good facility, here, so, it's got storage and things as well, so.
Whereabouts, sorry?
At the Maniototo Park, in the stadium. Yeah, so something we can check out, so some other parts of the district don't have that, all that shop, parts that don't work together and they've fallen out, much together. Facility, so
Oh, this one.
as you get some feedback about that.
No.
Any questions for Maria?
All of a sudden you've
I know
got.
it's a riveting topic, this one.
Well, if we've got no problems, I suppose that's a good thing. What I can see, it looks as if you got a handle on
I wouldn't say they're very handy for small communities without
it.
building.
They are, but by the same token, you do look around at, a lot of them on farms, and they do age very quickly and rust and other bits and pieces. And if you end up having to dispose of them, it won't be cheap.
Yeah, I think the idea, if people want them, they need to go in with the eyes open, that they need to be looking at something more permanent over, within a period. How we transition into that as well, because we don't want them before. Yeah. Not passes. That's right.
We have the workaround, who's obviously we've got no issues here, so we won't talk about here. Those issues, as in to provide storage for when you provide a sporting brand.
Council doesn't know, give speak perhaps generally, or they do that, at least do it in clubs, so it's usually the clubs have the infrastructure. Council, you own the land and we have a lease or license agreement,
But
but
like I said, here, we would rent the stadium off the council.
Yeah.
So it's expected that the council will provide storage within that.
Is there storage now? There's a wee bit in there, aren't
There is one storage room and
Yeah.
it's used by the AUP show.
there? Yeah.
And so other clubs don't have an opportunity to use that, of a chock a block. And we don't have a lot of storage within the stadium either.
Yeah.
So it does present problems to our sports groups of where they can store their gear. Because they don't want to cart it away out to the game.
to be fair, we haven't had those requests to do anything yet at this stage, so what we're saying, we want a policy, so if we get.
He is good, right? I'm not talking about it.
Yes, so you're saying that, but the tennis club, the tennis rooms, that's full of shelving. Yeah, for the library area where they've got a shift. The tennis people don't want to rent, no, they don't want to rent. And they're not being done as storage, yes, because they moved it. I accidentally moved the tennis net out all the.
So I guess you've got any thoughts, let us know over the next, so we can gather those up.
Yeah. Right, when you send an email,
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anyone looking for schools? That's the other.
Not here.
Thanks, Maria.
Okay, yeah, I guess just one thing to mention is we're not saying containers are bad. We're just, the preference is that we work towards shared solutions, shared storage solutions, and often, like making sure that we're using the buildings that already exist to their maximum capacity first. So that's where that comes from. It's,
Yeah, it's good, yeah.
Fair enough, yeah.
well done.
That's good.
Thanks, Maria.
thank
Very
you.
good,
Bye.
thank you. All right.
Now we've got Gordy.
But yeah, because it's going to be something on the screen anyway. So we're updating the PT in cemetery strategy. And this first slide being soon. And I guess we're just aware that we've got next said we've got a growing population, and the diversity within that population is also growing, and certain different populations have different ways to, I guess, different beliefs and how they view people and things like that. We need to be quite cognizant of that. And council isn't the only supplier of cemeteries. We also have a number of cemetery trusts, and most of them, in fact, are in the many. So I'll show you a little list of those shortly. We provide, all our cemeteries provide coffins and casket burials, as you know, and also ashes for interments. We don't provide natural burials at this time because they're sort of not enough organic matter to help that decomposition process, and they're also quite hungry. Have trees and things on top of it that we might keep them growing. So the way our cemeteries out here are dry land cemeteries, so and we haven't had the demand either. So next slide, thanks. Cemeteries are managed under the Bureau of Information Act, and that Act gives council significant discretion on where they're established, how they're managed, when and how burials take place, and we have all that sort of stuff under cemetery bylaw and cemetery handbook, so it's all pretty procedural. People report cemeteries and funerals and so it's pretty straightforward stuff. Next slide, thanks. And that's a list of the cemeteries we have in the district. The open cemetery, I guess the ones on the left-hand side of council and the ones on the right-hand side of the cemeteries, and the ones in the middle, the ones that are closed. So that's 50 in total. Quite a few. And next slide, please. So cemeteries exist, I guess, for burials, and they also hold an important part of our history, a lot of history in cemeteries, and they tell stories of people's places and events and things as well, and our places for reflecting on population. So thanks. So I guess what we're trying to say what we are going to say in the strategy is that what matters is that cemeteries are generally tidy, they're respective places, the access is quite easy, it's quiet, there's information available about the people who are interred. There's also water available for cultural reasons and for people who want to put flowers, and we know which areas are available to produce. Next slide, thanks. So currently we think we're providing all that, and there's three cemeteries that are reaching the capacity as I laid out at the moment. So one here is Naseby. So the board last term approved a plan for that, and that'll really kick underway next financial year with the development of new plots coming out there. So that's
So good. What was that? Like they're going to increase the land area at Naseby?
yeah. So we found quite a lot of trees there last year. We're tidying that up, and we're increasing the plots. So it's about 65 left. Got new plots there in the current cemetery, and got to go somewhere else. But
Yes.
not the busiest cemetery,
Yeah,
luckily.
that's only another couple of years.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years on average. Yeah. And if you go to the next slide, this gives a bit of an overview of the trends and interments. So clearly ashes are increasing in popularity. So that will slow down the speed that cemeteries are needing to be developed. And all our cemetery data is online. And working with the trusts, we put the data online as well, so people can search that exactly. So if so which, and
The cemetery goes to capacity.
sorry,
You want to make it, say if you want to, you're at capacity, you need to find more land.
so I'll just come on to that.
Oh, it's going, yeah.
Yep. So, that's just the trend and Alex, so that's, sorry, mostly politics and property. So we've got capacity, so this is the capacity slide here. So, within the next 5 years, out here really is, only the Naisby, as I've mentioned. And then in the 2045 to 5, but there's Ranfurly itself. They're quite way on, unless we get a disaster or something.
Yeah.
Anticipating, but this is based on the last 5 to 10 year rates. So we're quite comfortable throughout the whole district actually for space with procurements for at least the next 50 to years. Quite good to know. Because if it been a bit of a paper, I think might as well focus right out of space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're not like them at this stage, but I guess as their population grows, so does the doing up with their symmetry space. That's probably one after the other. Jump for next report to work on that. And the last one's recommendations, we just recommend that the policy sets out, sets out a vision for and values for our symmetries, goals, and that we provide symmetries to meet the growth and community expectations. And, take account of the trends in burials and other needs, such as cremation and whatever else might come with us, and consider the cultural needs as they come with an increase in population as well. And that we liaise with key stakeholders or focus groups if we've got something to consider about groups. That's sort of what we're sort of pushing this strategy to say, and happy to get any feedback or something we might have forgotten, but we can send out the whole draft document if you're a snapshot. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Any questions?
Is the cost standard over central total?
Yeah.
Every.
So out in the Maniototo though, the permits are done by a contractor.
Yep.
And so he charges not my council, I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
The burial, the plot purchase of the standardised. Yeah, the rest of the district gets standardised human fee as well.
The bus operate under the same rules, just as another one?
No, they have their own rules under the Act, so they don't need to follow council.
Oh, right.
But they have very low numbers of insurance, and over the last few years, we've had a few of the trusts wind up and council in that case have had to take on those cemeteries as well. So it's something we don't want to do all the time because it would have cost for maintenance and carrying and that sort of stuff. So especially if the cemeteries are private maintenance sort of stuff. So far, the ones out here run pretty well with their trustees and they're quite passionate about it as well. But,
Oh, very good. Hopefully, others, we're needing one for once.
yeah.
Any more questions? Thanks, Sean. Paul,
Yeah, next time we've got some.
Upgrade to follow.
On liven it up.
Right.
Thanks, members. I don't think I've been to be Logan.
No, yeah.
I'm the chief financial officer of
Right.
the council, so I will come and talk to you about all things financial. So we're going to be talking today about a couple of subjects, but mainly around long-term planning. Before I start, this is Lisa May. Lisa is a graduate accountant, and this is her first time in the Maniototo. So as we were driving down, she was very interested to look out over the scenery and the greenness. And I said, look, come February, March next year, it won't be green. But in fact, then. Okay.
next week.
So we'll kick off with long-term planning. It's going to be around how the community board fits into this process. So if we can have the first page, thanks, Sarah. So long-term planning, we're going to talk about local government, the purpose of local government, focusing on community boards, what our key documents are, and we will have a bit of a crack at explaining rates in 100 words or less. Not sure we can do that, but we'll move on to the next one. We'll use a little bit of jargon, and I will, you guys have got a copy of this, but we updated it slightly this morning, so we will get the new update out to you. We always talk about an LTP, that's the long-term plan. We talk about a CD, and that's our consultation document. We talk about the LGA, or the Act, which is the Local Government Act of 2002, and that's the thing that we are really governed by. We also will talk a little bit about fiscal envelope. Now that is the level of income, including rates that the council is prepared to accept to deliver its services. So you may end up, the council might turn around and say, like ORC have said they want a 0% increase. That's the fiscal envelope that the staff need to work in to come up with the budgets that deliver 0%. We will talk UAGCs, which is a uniform annual general charge. It's a fixed part of the general rate, and it's levied on all what's called rating units, that's effectively titles. We'll talk WSCCC, which is the Water Services Council Controlled Organisation. Another important thing is this intergenerational equity concept, which is effectively to ensure that today's generation and future generations receive a fair balance of the costs and the benefits of public services. So what we talk about there is if you want a new library, it is unfair to levy rates today to pay for the library on today's ratepayers, because there is a long-term benefit that future ratepayers will get. And TAs are territorial authorities. We interchange that with councils, community boards are part of that. So that's what the TA means. The next one. We'll talk about the purpose of local government. Currently, Section 10 of the Local Government Act sets out the purpose of local government, and that purpose is to enable the democratic local decision making and action by and on behalf of communities, and to provide social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of communities in the present and for the future. So that changed in 2017, I think, when the Labor government got in. It changed from 2012 when the National Government and Act were in power. However, it's going to change. There is a new bill that is working its way through the system. It is still to enable the democratic local decision making and action by and on behalf of communities. It has added to meet the current and future needs of communities for good quality local infrastructure, local public services and performance of regulatory functions in a way that is most cost effective for households and businesses. And it is to support local economic growth and development by fulfilling the purposes set out above. So you can see there's a change. The second one was more social or well-beings. This one is now, let's focus on infrastructure, let's focus on public services and regulatory functions. Next one, thanks. They've also added core services, because that wasn't well defined in the previous iterations of the legislation, and it reinstates the definition of core services. So that was removed from the previous government. It's now being put back. Core services are network infrastructure, public transport services, we don't have that, waste management, civil defence. Interestingly, it now includes libraries, museums, reserves and other recreational facilities. It never used to. In the previous 2012, 2017. But it has now, because what councils were doing was they were dropping off those types of things because it wasn't part of the Act. In performing its role, the local authority must have particular regard to the contribution that core services make to its communities. So it kind of gives you the ability to do the stuff that your communities expect you to do, swimming pools, libraries, that type of thing. Next one, thanks. So the LGA requires local authorities to meet current and future needs. And it talks about that in terms of local infrastructure, local public services, and the performance of regulatory functions. What that actually does is it forces councils to look at and plan for the intergenerational equity side of things. So then the question is, in terms of that, what part does the community group play? And that's just an open question. I'm not going to answer that, but that's where you kind of start to fit in looking longer term. Because the council will be looking longer term, and they will be expecting those types of the things you talk about to fit in with what they're thinking about in terms of longer term views.
What happens if we have amalgamation and they've come out this week saying that they want council to look at amalgamated other council, and our council effectively becomes a community?
Yeah, look, I think we're playing the ball we've been bowled at the moment, which is this is the legislation we currently have. We don't know what the new legislation might look like, and they've always said, governments have always said that you know, they haven't said it directly or as directly, but they've always kind of intimated amalgamation would be better. So we've always had that hanging over us, and I guess at the end of the day, what we would do is we would see what that looks like. At the moment, they're talking regional councils to go potentially, and a method of governing that type of thing. But you've got unitary authorities sitting in Marlborough, and I think Tasman's a unitary authority, so they provide all of the services that a regional council would provide at district council level. So they deal with it with that. So there's history around that, I guess. If they turn around and say, well, we will now have a super territorial authority that runs from the Waitaki River south, for argument's sake, ORC, and let's throw in environment development as well. There's just not a lot of point in that. So you've got Lower South Island council. They would need to work out how you get local representation, and it might even end up like the Auckland situation where you end up with local boards who have a lot of delegated authority to do stuff within a district. Apart from that, I can't.
So I guess do we have a chance to be in that process? Like they go and consult, but like as a group, and I guess this is aimed at Peter as well. In the chat, are we involved in how we would like to see ourselves placed, or are we just involved in negotiating the best deal once to be made? I guess. Because the real risk is the way I see it is we're having all this now, what community board rollers, but if it does amalgamate into a bigger entity, we could find ourselves being on the middle months community board and stuck in Dunedin.
Yeah.
Or Central Otago and Dunedin and here say that, you know, that's just a small part of Queenstown Lakes, that we have 3 elected members from Alexandra, 2 from Cromwell, and 1 from the greater large rural component.
I guess it's always best to be kind of leading the process, because you then get to determine as much of your destiny as you can, rather than ignoring it and then getting it done to you.
And I guess when do we know the proposed, this is only for Tamer and Peter, I suppose, when do we know where proposed boundaries may look, and do we go?
Right now, I'm giving this no thought because I don't think we need to be worried. We don't need to be worried about it. At the moment, we don't even know what the legislation is. All we know is an idea from the government, and they've asked us, they've put out their 30-page document, and they want feedback by the end of February, and then they'll use it to shape up the legislation. So there's likely to be subtle changes, and then even if it gets introduced into the House, they said it won't be passed into law until 2027, and that's when formally these combined territorial boards would be established, and the 2 years would start from then. I suspect in the new year the mayoral form will start giving this some thought. And councils will probably be asked to also give it some thought and to understand what the art of the possible could be. So it helps start shaping some of the thinking. But I don't think we need to be too concerned at this point in time because it's
All I'm really interested in right now is delivering a long-term plan,
Yeah.
27, 37. So-
which actually might not have any relevance if in let's say the law passes in 2027. In 2029, we form one big regional council for all of Otago.
Yeah.
Then would have to redo all LTPs, but
Yeah.
right now, that's way out there.
Yeah.
But I guess as far as, if we're thinking like that, why aren't we putting things on our LTP now and then the never list because we don't know they're gonna be funded or not?
Well, look,
Like
I
we
think,
want tar seal roads or something, saying, well, we've got issues, why aren't we thinking, if that be, we know we're gonna, the water's gonna get choppy, are we better, if we're saying the long-term plan, we want more for our bang for our buck?
I think that, and it just follows on from what Peter said, is effectively, we've got a set of legislation right now that we deal with, and that requires us to still think long-term. And we don't know what the legislation is going to look like, but we've got to, as I said earlier, we've got to play the ball that's being bowled at us at the moment, and that's currently under the LGA 2002. And I think that if tar sealing roads is important to this community board, then that's the thing you should be advocating for anyway, regardless of what you're going to end up with. And getting that to fit into the council's long-term plan, rather than treating that as let's put it in there because we don't know and we just want to kind of put it in as a placeholder. Like, I think what we've got an opportunity here is to develop a comprehensive district-wide with input from all of the wards and the community boards that do improve your community's infrastructure and their benefits them. And as I say, I will say further on, you need to think long-term about that. So I think it's really just, let's stick with the LTP and if we need to change when legislation changes or proposals, we will change.
Sorry, on the LTPs. Is there a limit document or something?
It's
So like, obviously it's been a change like government act already, like you do it 10 years in advance.
no, what we do is and I will talk about it, but I'll talk about it now and I can skip that page.
All right, sorry.
What we do is it's a 10-year document.
Yeah.
So the council with the community board sit down and they work out what they're going to do for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
But every 3 years they refresh it.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we last year was, we did a enhanced annual plan, which we were allowed to do, because the three waters.
Yeah.
Thing changed. It was not enough time for us to pivot straight back into an LTP.
Yeah.
So we did an annual plan, which I'll talk about as well. And then we did an LTP for 2 years.
Yeah.
So that annual plan plus 2 years gives us that 3-year gap. And now we're redoing the long-term plan to be adopted by 2027 for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So the theory being that, if you've thought about it well enough and look long term, you can actually just roll when you get to year 4, you can roll that into year 1 of your new plan and continue doing what you do.
So we're essentially talking about just a 10-year budget, though.
No, it's not just a 10-year budget.
Broader than budget.
It's what you're supposed to talk about in your long-term plan is what the issues you're facing, how you plan to do it, you set your levels of service. So
Social stuff in there as
yeah, well, roading for argument's sake, the levels of service for roading might be, in the Maniototo, we have gravel roads. That's the level of service that the council and the community board are prepared to accept in terms of cost. That then is a conversation with your community to say, are you prepared with that level of service? Do you want it raised? If you raise it, it will increase the cost. So that's the kind of discussion. So all of those things go into a long-term plan.
Right.
So that raising and service here is a direct cost on the council, because it's roading, is district-wide funded.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean we pay it here.
Yeah.
It means that we're gonna fight for the road. When we do our budget, the council roading, meaning they want one more grading year on 30% of the road, that costs $200,000. We put that in our budget back over there.
But essentially, it's a living document. You give everyone, if you review it, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's a,
Yeah.
that's,
There is legislation covering community boards. You guys would have seen this with your delegations. So you're established under the LGA, section 49-54 covers the community boards. Section 49 establishes them. Either by order in council, which would have been the first ones, or a representation review, which is the local government commission goes through. If council projects, they've decided to want community boards, that would go to the local government commission, and the local government commission has overturned council recommendations. And I can attest to that in the Mackenzie District Council. Their representation review was to do away, they had 4,000 ratepayers, it wasn't a lot of ratepayers. 4,000 ratepayers, 3 community boards for the towns. They wanted to not have them. Local government commission, after petitioning by residents, put them back in. So the local government commission can do that sort of stuff. Section 50 deals with your membership, and section 51 deals with your status. So you are an unincorporated body, you're not the local authority, and you're not a committee of council. So you're kind of a little bit different than all the other bodies that you may interact with. Next slide, please. And section 52 defines your role. So to represent and advocate for the interests of the community, consider and report on all matters referred to the community board by the TA, or any matters of interest or concern to the community board. So it's not limited to what the TA sends to you. If there's stuff in the community that's coming up, you have the ability to consider it and ask for or report on it. You are to maintain an overview of services provided by the TA within your community. And that's why, Gordy's turned up and talked about cemeteries, because that is important to the community board. You are and have the ability to prepare an annual submission to the TA for expenditure within the community, which is what we've been talking about. It talks annual, but I would suggest you need to look further into the future and undertake any delegated responsibilities. Go to the next slide, please, Sarah. So section 53 outlines the powers. So effectively, the powers that you have are delegated to you by the council. And you may not acquire, hold, or dispose of property, or appoint, suspend, or remove staff. Self-obvious, I think. Next one, thanks. I'm not going to go through this because you've seen your delegations, so you know what you're looking at. So the next slide there is, and this was added, that was the differences. And next slide, let's talk about long-term planning. So it's a strategic 10-year document, sets out council's priorities, proposed activities and services, and projects to enhance community wellbeing. It also sets expectations around levels of service and measures that indicate success or otherwise. So already you can see in those first 2 points where you can be interacting with the council to start that discussion. Details how council will fund these activities through rates and other income sources. So other income sources, unit charges. Swimming pools is the classic case that probably impacts the local area, and acts as a framework for resource allocation and provides a basis for community accountability. So what we're actually talking about is we're asking the community to pay a certain amount of money to deliver these services at this level. So you've asked them for that money. How well did we go delivering that service at that level? And that's where you become accountable to the community. It is refreshed every 3 years. It's a requirement of the LGA. And And again, how does the community board want to fit into this process? Because you can have an influence on setting those levels of service to a certain extent.
And I want to say that we don't have a long-term plan for here though, do we?
No, it's for the
It's
council.
for the council, yes,
But
there's no broken down.
No, no. But if you turn around and say, we want the pool to operate 365 days, right? What does that mean to, obviously, that's an increase in level of service. How is that funded? Those are the types of things that you have that discussion with.
I think that's where the community fall apart. They don't understand, but the community board doesn't do anything. The community board not do anything new. The community board, it's actually the community board, it's the council that do that and through a planning process. They're not progressive. We should have business, the community board should be developing business like on the street. Person thinks the community board should be doing something in the community. They're not doing anything, but if effectively the council does the doing, the community board's bringing that to us and we
Yeah.
revere. That's worked really well with Becky at the pool, and she's on the schools about the pool. And then it's come through council and fixing the issues and whether we solve it there or, and that's where I think the community gets frustrated with council because they think that we should be doing everything. Actually, the voice of the community goes to council.
Because you guys are effectively the connection between your constituents within your area and the council, right? You know what your area wants, needs, etc. The council may not know that. I mean, Stu will be advocating on your behalf at the council table, but the fact that the five of you get out amongst the community and gather all of that information, that's where you formulate and put together, well, this is what the Maniototo want and need. Here you go, council. We're happy to work with you, but we want to have these types of things in there. And we really want to understand if we can't have them, why can't we have them? And there'll be very valid reasons why that happens. Costs could be one of them. But you need to be able to state the case, get the response, whichever way that response is, and then push that back out to the community. So you'll be kind of the go-to.
And there's a problem with that, is that you and I and Becky and Doug might be going out and we're meeting 20 people, or whatever group we're involved in for that afternoon. And they will tell you what we need. And then the council sort of only recognised in a format where it's a drop-in centre or a survey. So if we have an issue that I'm sure you'll bring up at any stage, we need to get it sort of half-by formalised or get Nick to come in like did at the business group. And it's like, we want lights up there. So they did an oral recording, an oral submission to the long-term plan, going up staff here, this is what the business group want today. So if there's things coming down the road, you need to be going, well, actually, we need to do something that's relative to council. There's 10 or 15 of us, go to any one of the staff or two, Nick and go, we want this to see if we can get traction on these 5 issues on the long-term plan. Where a lot of people, we go there, and I've been first to go to council, but our community want that. But the resident survey said, and it's like, I go back to the tourism, there's 387 people submitted to the long-term plan of tourism. Not many from the Maniototo, a lot of them are kids. And yet the tourism, it's the people that put the money into it, and then sometimes those become the document that the resident survey said, and that's a bit like Michelle Bissett said at the election. But surveys are only a small percentage of the total number of the population. That's where it's hard, because you go out to consultation, you go out to the community, say drop-in centre, you'll get 6 Dowlings come in and tell you the same thing. And then, you know, how that gets on the document to be moved is very hard for the next step. Then you go, well, Cromwell's got 380 people wanting the same sort of thing, and so you compete.
But that's something, sorry, I was just going to say that's something I can support through this role on the board, and how we actually formulate the response from this board to go to council, and then Stu's the one that I guess talks to that as council. So I guess we're in the period now where we're starting to do work in the space, and even those intersections we looked at today around improvements there. Those types of things we're going to start thinking about and talking with you about those sorts of improvements to feed in a long-term plan.
It's really hard for me because we say, yeah, we've got this, And you'll have McKinley who would have been sitting over the road going, but we don't want another road in Maniototo, it's only 3 Ks, we don't want that. And you pull, why would you want to have a pool going, because it loses so much money, and no, so I've got to win that battle with 10 others, and that's hard.
I think we'll get to consultation, because I think that that's a different issue. I think that if you're just relying on 1 month at the time you deliver your consultation document and it goes out to people, you'll get that effect. What we need to do, and we're developing our plan up to do that, is actually start with what we call pre-engagement. So we will come out and talk to the various towns and have people drop in there, rather than rely on everybody to submit at an LTP, where you usually get the people who submit to those, they usually do it, and that's what they do, and you get the vast majority who just, no, I can't be bothered writing that down. Whereas if you have people come out and talk to people, that's where I think you get a better idea of what the area wants. So we've got to work that through and develop that plan. It's too bad Colin's engagement people.
I got strategy stuff the other day. It's sort of like a document that we had that discussion here, that would go forward and have drop and center, add that information over time, and so on, and a picture comes out.
I suppose that's sort of what I was trying to get to, I guess, was we don't have a draft LTP for Maniototo.
No.
At no point has ever dissected out so the residents of Maniototo can look at their own 10-year plan. As opposed to they've got to wade through Central Togo Council's plan.
Well,
which will
because
be mostly problem myself anyway.
I guess the thing that we would need to look at is how can we, because we're effectively starting from scratch for this LTP.
Yeah.
So we have cost centers in our accounting system that talks about individual, halls and the likes. It doesn't deal with roading at that level, because that's always at the district level.
Yeah.
But there are ways that we can take the ideas and the concepts and build them up into budgets for the Maniototo program. So, but we don't necessarily prepare a 10-year plan for the Maniototo, because we're not set up to do that.
Yeah.
Not saying that's not a bad idea.
I want to say I think you get more engagement. I'm sure Terry would be the same if they had a bit more likable.
What I'm going to say is, though, that's not going to happen in 2027, 37. This process effectively starts from 1 July, straight after you've adopted the last LTP. We start preparing for the next one. So we're in the process now where, what are we, November? We've got 13 months effectively to have our long-term plan draft ready to go to audit by 31st of December 2026. And then the last 6 months of that, between 1 January and 30 June 2027, that's all dealt with, processed through, we have to get it audited. We then go to consultation. The council deliberates. We then audit the LTP again after the deliberations, and then the council adopts it. So that last 6 months is taken up by process rather than input.
Right.
So that's why we're looking at starting this. It's earlier, but it gives us the next 12 months to get to the point. And it might seem a long time to produce a document, but there's so much that goes into this thing that it does take all of that time to get it to a point where council's happy with it, community's happy with it. We can then send it to order.
Do you feel it's too long? Do you feel 10 years is too long to make a plan?
No,
I don't read cemeteries and like maybe sections or whatever. There must be, over the last 10 years, the difference will be astronomical in costing and.
yeah, we're supposed to inflate them. Like we apply inflation numbers. So
Yeah, it's been CPI though.
well, no, it depends what we don't use CPI for, because infrastructure costs always go up by more than CPI. CPI's got a different basket of goods
Right,
than we would normally use. So we use economic house to produce, and most councils use they call business and economic reviews. I don't know, but they produce it. They're professional economists. They project it out what they think it's going to be for 10 years. But 10 years is I think the right number because we deal with long life assets.
Yep.
You can't budget for a swimming pool because you're not only dealing with the operational costs, but you're dealing with when do we replace it?
Yeah.
How are we going to fund that? What are we going to put in? When does that happen? So
you're also basing your parks and rec mowing off the same LTP, I think.
Yep, and that's probably easier because that's an operational cost that we know what the mowing is going to, what our cycle is for mowing that produces that level of service. Again, if you wanted to increase the number of mows.
Yeah.
Then that's a change in level of service, which has a cost. And that all gets discussed through the long-term plan.
And the classic example of that was when the good shit, we'd have been winning. And a Turahua, they used to do all their own stuff. Then we've got those levels of service and down around the showgrounds, further out for 1 or 2 cuts a year. So if you're thinking about that and you're thinking, and you will be, the other things that you've got to start tagging and thinking about the mowing, if you're not having level of service on the parks and rec, that's the time to go, for this month, for these 3 months, we've got one more mowing.
Yeah.
So it's hard to budget for mowing, we budget for a 50-year swimming. That's all.
That's right, yeah. But of course, in that, there's an end of use date, and this one here is done, and it might be the next time, then it might be not the same, it might be a heated or solar on top of a Roxford pool. They built one, and then they put solar on it, contribute a fair bit to the running of the pool. So it might be, it's no different than the Roxford centre that burnt down. It's coming back to the table that maybe we're looking at building a new facility, and that's the pigeons are coming out of the trees now because all of a sudden it wasn't what we used to have, and people get upset. So I guess for you and Becky especially, as you guys are young ones, is that you want to think about a 10-year plan. It's how you bring that to the table that you're thinking about, which we can put in, because you know that's what's about. If that's going to be replaced at whatever time it is, what is it? Replacement might be $6, but if we paying under 7.2 and get money out of long-term plan or district-wide funding, you can have what you want, but knowing that it's going to be at the past salaries. Yeah, it's good to think that way because, and especially level of service, because maybe, and that was the thing our central thinking the strategic thing the other day. We want what we've got. It may just be the level of service goes up or not. It's might only have for the council 500,000 is 1% on the weight across the district. 500,000 for 1% of everyone else central might give us a lot. Yeah. So that's how you got to think. Yeah.
So we can have the next slide there. So we're talking consultation document. The consultation document is the thing that you guys will have seen that goes out to the ratepayers around probably March, April, an LTP year. That's the thing that we consult on. We do not consult on what's in the long-term plan. So what we then have to do is we have to own it down. So the purpose of the consultation document is to provide a basis for the community participation in the local authorities' decision making. So we put it out there. That's what you're talking about. It must provide a fair representation of the matter or matters proposed for inclusion in the long-term plan. Explains the overall objectives of the proposal and how those objectives impact rates and levels of service. And here's the kicker, can easily be understood or by interested or affected people. What they say is wash it down to 20, 30 pages, summarise everything, but make it readable.
Yeah.
So let's make really complicated issues more complicated because you haven't provided enough information. And you may have heard from people when they're talking about that, you haven't provided us with enough detail. Legislation specifically says you've got to hone it down. Because otherwise, you used to consult with your long-term plan. You used to put the draft out, 300 odd pages would go out, and you'd expect all the ratepayers to read that, understand it, and then submit on it. Can we have the next page, please? So it's identifying and explaining to the people of the district significant and other important issues and choices facing the council. It informs discussions, between the council and its community. Council needs to decide what it considers its key consultation issues. You might have 30 issues you want that you think are important, but you have to then go through and say 5 of those are what we consider key. So we don't put the other 25 in the consultation document. We just deal with those 5. So you don't consult on everything. But if we go to the next page, we had a point in there somewhere. You don't consult on everything, but everything can be talked about and submitted on. So if someone has gone and read the long-term plan, they can submit on anything that's in the long-term plan. If it's not in the long-term plan, they can still submit on it. So Gordy's tree assassination program might not actually be mentioned anywhere in the long-term plan specifically, but if someone wants to talk about it, they can submit on it. What we tend to get is the 5 or so key concepts. We had 9 last time because it was 3 waters was the first one. We really needed to get that through the long-term plan process, increasing volumetric charging, the turfs, all those sorts of things went into the long-term plan consultation document. So what's your role in the process, the LTP process? As I said before, you need to have a long-term view. Don't just think about what you want next year. Think about what your communities look like, or you want them to look like, because you've got the ability to shape them. What's the next 3 to 5 years look like? And I'd say that 3 to 5 years is a minimum, because we deal in 10-year plans. And if you can get something to say, this is what the community will want to do, and we can embark on doing that, you don't tend to lose it every refresh of the LTP that you do, because you've already decided and it's already in there. Again, how do you see community develop? What ideas do you have to make community development happen? What can you do to bring people here? What do you need to plant? I'm not saying this is just a thing. Do you need to plant trees in the main street to make it more attractive? Those are the types of things. Even though you are part of council, you are advocating for your community. So what you're doing is you're saying, what does our community want? So you've had your strategic session. I've talked to you a little bit about what goes into the LTP. It's kind of thinking time, because we won't see you again until February. So what we're after is we'll come back in February and workshop with you what your views and thoughts are. We won't have started our budgets yet in the LTP space. So it's effectively you're getting in at the ground floor and starting to be able to put stuff in to budgets. So I think that, you know, you don't have to do too much over Christmas. Start thinking about your LTP stuff.
What would be issues you didn't have if you had to do that in 5 minutes now?
It's probably one of the first improvements, long-term improvements that need in Snowball. I mean, the first one's probably. Ooh, after that. I mean, there's lots of, no, probably nothing major in the works.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is like, to me, you've touched on it before, level of service of the mowing of the grounds could be something, you know, maybe rural roads, you know, level of service on spray on the road.
I thought you meant infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, guess are the questions that if the people that you mix with are not happy with parts of it, that is what they're saying. We need to, it's like, oh, well, you know, the senator, we retail sealed that last time when people would have an RSA day or whatever. You know, the other things are the weeds aren't good enough around the street.
we've heard about around the cars, you know, or do we, and so I guess that the roundabout way, that's calls come up, you know, all that, but is there things in the drop, you wake up in the middle of the night, we want more money to put on the road, because that, we just go back to QP, Tracy and Curtis and I will go, no, we want we want a level service up 15%, and in that, weeds and pests will be a major part of it, and obviously bridges is a different, it's in roading, so I mean, that's what the other things that.
So just on that, and as part of the whole LTP process, for an example, for roading is the roading team and Mark and Paul will come and present on the level of service we provide in roading and what our hierarchy of roads look like and what that constitutes for grading and different things like that, what we currently spend and what our current spraying program gives us. And this is where we want the feedback of we don't think it's cutting it, so we need more, or we actually think that you're probably going too far in here. And this is where, but we got to be mindful that if we are asking for more, is it there a trade-off with something else, or is it just the increase in costs?
And that's where, I'm going to say, where we play games at council, is that Curtis and I say, no, this is not negotiable. You might have to look at parks and recs or pools if the people in the government might have rate caps on us then. And they may come down and go, well, it's only got to be on absolutely core infrastructure, which is what, by the time water's gone, could be road and it could be parks and rec or whatever it is. So that's where we'll battle at council. We go, no, but this is not negotiable. We've had bridges that have failed. We have got roads that we can't get out in an ambulance. We can't do that. So we need that. And that's where the power games and council, you might say, is if we can get that on parks and rec or customer services or property, and that's the politicking of it. Yeah.
So we'll move on to the next slide. Thanks, Sarah. We talk about community consultation. I've briefly touched on this, but a significant part of this process involves community consultation. So you're trying to understand public priorities and feedback on proposed activities and funding. You may already know what you, and that's fine. But we have a consultation process. So it can either be informal, you know, you're at a barbecue and you start talking about stuff. So you're talking about the development of the plan, or and it leads into the development of the plan. And then you can seek formal input from the community. That's the special consultative process. We have to do that. That is 1 month of consultation as a minimum. And that's where we go around communities and you ask people to come along and listen to what we've got to say and have an input, and you get, you know, because it's in the middle of winter, you don't get as many people coming out. But if we could pre-engage, so start between now and kind of March and deal with consultation, pre-engagement there, we can get more of an insight. If you know what your community wants through pre-engagement, you don't have to consult on it again. You don't necessarily have to put that out as a key consultation issue if you have an understanding and a view of what your community's after. So you can, pre-consultation does actually reduce the bit at the end where the formal part happens. You still have to do it, but you've got an idea, so you might not need to be consulting on that particular item.
Yes, with pre-consultation, you get a feel of what the community wants, because through consultation, you can quite easily find that 15 people from Maniototo or 30 people of like-minded people from Maniototo do not want stuff happening in their community. And you'll actually find an outlier will come in through the consultation thinking that it wasn't what we've been working on for the last year. And if they see that $44 and all their ratepayer bill goes swim, well, they don't want to swim. Well, they've retired here from the far north, they don't swim. So you've got to make sure that in that process that a lot of that's fed into staff and it is a community push. Yeah. Because consultations like an election, you could end up with things coming in left field that a lobby group would just say, we want council to do this. Yeah. So it is.
Okay. Formal consultation only deals with those issues that council considers to be key. So the consultation document goes out for 1 month as consultation. It only deals with the key consultation issues. Okay, so it's kind of bundled up into a nice little package.
And that's where the frustration probably comes to the ratepayer, that we've told you what we want. Yeah. The council go, actually,
we want to look at heat transfer or water systems or look at watering problem because it's a big ticket item and you go, but we want this. And it's not well, actually, it's not a key focus of council.
So we'll move on to annual plans. Annual plans are kind of the 2 years in between long-term plans. Where how much it will cost to explains whether and it should identify any significant changes to the council's LTP. So if something has come up that you didn't plan for, that should go in your annual plan. It may require public consultation if changes proposed are significant, but does not need to. The significance threshold from the another policy I'm going to throw in is our significance engagement policy deals with what should be publicly consulted with.
Right.
So if I had a situation once in a previous life, we budgeted for a library in year 7. The government came up with some money to kickstart it effectively. We brought it forward in an annual plan. Under normal circumstances, if it hadn't been in the long-term plan, we would have had to consult on it.
Right.
But because it was there, even though we were bringing it forward, it wasn't a consultation. It was okay. Next one, thanks. Oh, rates, this is great. We love rates. We did have a session yesterday. But let's get this straight. Rates are a tax. They are a tax on wealth, and wealth is defined under the Rating Act. It's property value. It's an unfortunate measure because property value doesn't necessarily translate to ability to pay.
Yeah.
So, but I think what you have to realise is that rates are a tax. They can either be targeted or of a general nature. They can be fixed or charged as variable. So you can have a complete chain. You can mix and match. They are based on land value or capital value. So land value is obviously the value of the land. Capital value is the value of the land plus the value of the improvements. Some things aren't valued. So machinery, for argument's sake, if you're talking an irrigated property that has a centre pivot, the piece of equipment above the ground on the wheels that moves around is not part of the improvement value. It does not get rated. But the rest of it, the wellhead, the pipe head, does. Rates can mimic user pays, i.e. water and wastewater activities. So if you have water, you pay for water. If you don't, you don't. But it does not necessarily fully provide user pays. So, for example, the water case, it does not differentiate between schemes nor distance from the scheme. So we treat all water users the same, even though the one closest to the reservoir does not pay any less than the one 3 kilometres away, even though there's 3 kilometres worth of pipe that is in there. Rates are charged on variable means that rates is a tax on wealth, albeit property wealth. So you do end up with situations where ratepayers who are asset rich, cash poor, older people who have lived in the family home for a long time, that time. And the Local Government Rating Act caps the level of fixed charges at 30% of total rates revenue. There would be a inclination to just charge everything on a fixed basis. And that would mean that regardless of your land value, everybody pays the same. But the Act does away with that. You can only charge 30% of your total take as fixed charges.
So this is a discussion that I've been pushing quite hard on rates. We have solar farms and at the moment they're paying on land value, capital value, and we're quite good to talk just what you did yesterday regarding, we can set the level of rate. And in the North Island, for example, Waiya had forestry, their community was shrinking, so the council decided to charge 7 times the rate for forestry compared to everything else, so the community got it. And I'm saying that within industry, so if we have industry comes along, which is not traditional industry, and if it is a welcome tax, Helios is a classic example, the capital value, that's $1 billion. So that's what I've said, or $800 million. Then we can set a rate ultimately at 2.5 times the rateable value of your house. And they would contribute that, which like, and Paul will tell you in the Waitaki, I think the 2 dams generate 30% of the rural rate. So the rate payers won't have a lift for business. And that's where I'm pushing to capture the community good of business growth. Now, whether that be, so I'm only picking a song because it's one right here. Now, it was, and the dams, the Clyde Dam, the Roxford Dam, Pioneer Energy out here will be captured in that in a differential. And I guess that's one thing I'm trying to push is, I don't think the rating system is fair. And of course, with not fair, but I think with what the growth coming down the line, that's not the stuff we know, it's a great chance to tax.
We want to make,
Foreign investment.
we want to make a rating system that is as equitable as possible. So, we did kick off yesterday, with a presentation for a rating review, which is going to review all of our rates, how they're levied, what they're levied on, what differential, you know, the whole raft of things that will be put in front of the council to for them to make a decision on whether they would like to keep or change what's happening. And it may mean no change, or it could mean everything changes. So those are the types of things that we'll be talking through.
And I guess that's one I really like some understanding of this community thinks, because I know what I think. You know, and it may be I may be right way wrong, but
It's quite interesting. This community is a rural community by far. It has the most, I would say, the most rural impact. But you take the Cromwell, which has, and Vincent, they have the biggest urban areas. The impact on the Maniototo of a rate change will differ from the impact on those other 2 boards. So those are the type of things that we've got to work through to make sure that we get it right. Because when you don't change rating systems often, this is a once, and I would say once in a lifetime thing. It will be once in my lifetime.
and we're going through that discussion about, I think it's something we should have in the workshop, and we usually come back one day again to understand it, because you know, once you get into the growth of the numbers of houses in Central Target, and I'm the first to say, and just what Tim Cadogan's on here, what the rates are, because you've got 38% of the people in Bannockburn and Clyde are absentee landlords. So people are speculating in the housing market. So if we have a high capital value rate, the person in Auckland or Wellington, the person in Woolwich Development will be funding our kids' play centre and swimming pools through their rates. So that's how my thinking, and it's like, well, is it fair for the people in Ranfurly to subsidise the growth, and we've got growth as a development contribution, but there are also a lot of absentee landlords will be paying rates that don't live and use our services. So that's how I think.
So if we talk about the types of rates, so they can either be targeted or they can be of general nature. And both of those can either be fixed or variable. If you levy a targeted rate, so for argument's sake, a rate to fund libraries, that is a targeted rate. It can only be used for that purpose. You cannot levy a rate for libraries and then use the money for water assets. General rates are levied for general purposes and are either fixed or variable. So we call the UAGC is the fixed part of the general rate. We use that for argument's sake to fund elected members. So all of the elected members are now funded through the general rate. And if for argument's sake, the community board want to send all of its members off to the LGNZ community board forum, we can take money out of the council elected members' budget and use it for that, because they're all funded out of the same space. Variable rates are either levied on land value or capital value, and we have a split. So the general rate at the moment is levied on land value, and your ward rates that were your community facilities rate, for argument's sake, parts of that were general rate funded. You know, when you were paying for your swimming pools, capital value funded, sorry. Next slide, thanks. I will not talk too much about that. Just suffice it to say, capital value and land value are they're the only two that are used in the country. Annual value, nobody's ever used. It's based on rentals and it's way too hard to. Next one, thanks, Sarah. So I've talked about capital value includes the value of improvements, land value is just on value of the land, so I won't worry about that. Next one, thanks, Sarah. So we deal in impacts on average rates increases. So when we talk about rates increases last year, where it was 12.47, that is the average. There will be people who pay more and then we'll get people who pay less. And the reason we deal in average rates is because we have 15,000 properties and there will be 15,000 different rates increases.
Yeah.
Because the makeup of what they pay is different across all of them. So when you get, people complaining, you see 12.47 or 7.5 is what we're aiming for the annual plan. Some people will pay way more than that. And that's just the fact of their makeup. And you can't fix that because what rates do is they collect an amount of money that we need to fund the activities of council. It's like a balloon. You squeeze the balloon here, it pops out here. So it's difficult to deal in anything else apart from averages. Next slide, thanks, Sarah. So what can impact the rates increase? So valuation changes impact rates increases on an individual basis, right? So when QB come along and they're doing revaluations right now, when they come along and make their final determination on what your properties are valued at, that will have an impact on your amount of rates you pay. We also have an impact because when we raise the rates by, say, the next year we're aiming for 7.5, everybody will get the average increase of 7.5. So that's our portion of that. But I just wanted to run a quick example with a set of assumptions to show you how valuations impact it. So this council that we're running here needs $2,000 to fund its activities. There's only 2 properties in the district and 25% of the costs are recovered from fixed charges and 75% from land value. Property A is valued at 300 grand and property B is valued at 700,000. So the total district is worth $1 million. So, get up here. Can you have the next slide, please? So, here, we look at this top part. Don't go too far, I can't reach up there. So property A, as it stands, paid $700 of rates. Property B pays $1,300, and that's reflective of $300, 300,000 land value versus 700,000. Now, if we put the rates up by 5% as a council, 5% goes on, and property A goes up to 735, and property B goes up to 1365. They're both 5% increases. Over here, you can see the total requirement that I said was $2,000. It's gone up 5%. All right, so we now need $2,100. If we had a 5% rate rise that we put in, but a 20% valuation change for property A, for property B is a 50% valuation increase. We've still got $1 million in terms of what it was prior to the valuation changes, but it's now 1.459 million that the district's worth. So Property A, $700. Property B, $1,300. Property A, with a 20% valuation increase, so their value's still increased, will get us a reduction of 7% in its rates. But property B, their value's gone up from 700 to 1,099,000. Theirs only went up 60,000.
Yeah.
Theirs went up 399,000. What that means to property B is their rates rise is now 11%. We still have an average of 5 across the district, but because the valuations have changed, and they haven't changed by the same percentage. If this had gone up by 50%, then that would have been 5 and that would have been 10.
So that's two different towns, basically, arguing.
Could be,
Yeah.
could be.
But the
Or
rate,
it could be two different sectors. Rural sector has gone up by because of versus. the
but it
urban.
gets tricky when rural sector's gone down, and you valuate.
Well, I mean, let's say, if rural sector only went up 2% or 20%, rural sector just actually distorts it because, you know, we're talking $5+ million property, so it has a bigger impact. But the thing is with this, if everything stays the same, we impact it as a council. If things change because QV have revalued, they impact it. We have a really small impact on the values. And that's coming for the annual plan next year. QV are doing their revaluations now. They hope that they will have those done by next year. So we're going to be in terms of this and this bottom one. Really, it's just how the math works. It's you know, we do what we do, and we come up with our 7.5 average, but then we overlay the QV stuff, and it will change people's percentages quite considerably. And what I would advise is that we actually don't worry about values. They are what they are. We have no control over it. We have control over what we want to do. And if we start not interfering is not the word. If we start trying to influence our rates to mitigate their valuation changes, we run into an awful lot of trouble in the off years outside of the valuation, because you can fix it in that year, then you're going to have to refix it in the following year, because you're going to get some perverse changes.
It'll get slightly simpler because you're getting a rate freeze, don't you? So it'll make your job a bit easier.
Right. Well, I don't know what that's going to look like.
I don't know how it's going to work.
Next, so that's kind of interesting. And it's really, people turn around and say, oh, my value's gone up. You guys are going to get more money. No, we don't. It's squeezing the balloon. So if the valuations go up one area more than the other area, we're still going to have the area of the balloon. It's just different people are going to be paying. So I think we're near the end. I can see people are just saying, shut up, would you? But I'm not.
Rooms are taking it in.
So where to from here? Currently, as a finance team, we're running 4 projects, and they're all running basically at the same time. We're completing the 2025 annual report. We'll start the LTP workshops and strategy sessions with elected members, and we hope to complete those by August 2026. And that will then take into account the final roading budgeting, which NZTA always kind of throws out of sync, but we'll have to wait for that to happen. We will also be preparing the 2026 annual plan. And we've really based that on year 2 of the LTP, which means we shouldn't need to consult, but that'll be a decision that we'll make in the new year. We're undertaking a rates review as Stu talked about, and hopefully we get a bit more equity in the situation, but that'll be how the council and the community.
That rate review's probably about $150,000 worth of work.
Oh, a bit more than that, I was just.
$200,000 to go through that, so
I guess what I'm asking is, there's ideas that you've got of people having the rating system, we do need to know that because we're gonna spend, you know, a third of a percent of the rates just to get the review right, but it could be the best investment we make in the community is getting their rates set properly.
Yeah. We'll do our budgets for 2027, 37 LTP, and they will be complete by, August, and the annual report for 2026 will be being done at the same time, and we'll be completed by October 2026. We're still doing more. December 2025, we said we'll start there. 2020, we'll audit the CD and supporting documents. Yeah, in April 2027, February 2027, completed mid-March. So it takes about a month for the auditors. Auditing not just a consultation document, they're auditing what we call the supporting documentation, which would be draft LTP, all of the activity management plans that sit under that. So things like QPs, roading, asset management plan will go through that process and be audited, support what's in the long-term plan.
Who does the audit?
Audit New Zealand.
In charge.
We will consult over April 2027. We'll have hearings in May 2027. We'll have final audit of the LPP. So they'll be looking at the changes that they've made from the March thing. And then 1 July 2027, we all breathe a sigh of relief and start the whole process again on the second.
And some of the auditing system, have the paid auditors oversee the audit.
It does take 3 years to get this bloody, excuse my French, this thing from start to finish. It is not a easy thing to do. And it takes up a lot of council's time. But it's just what the law is. You cannot operate without an LTP. Can't set your rates. You just can't do anything. So yeah, we do start again, run through.
Still want to be involved?
Not their job.
So
It's not their
move. I want to got 5 minutes to talk about reserves, and then we'll go home. So move to the reserves page. Next one, thanks. So from 1 July, we districtised everything. So rating was then districtised. That effectively left a whole bunch of reserves that had been collected in the past. And I talked to the community board prior to the election about the reserves that you had there. And what we were doing was cleaning up the deficit reserves with the ones in surplus. So we had a clean start of amounts of money that you had. But what it does, because we have districtised everything, it's effectively stranded. Because if you remember when I talked about you can only use rates for the thing it was rated for. Yeah. So we rated prior to 1 July, we were rating at a community board level for activities. We stopped doing that, which means we can't take the rates that we collected in the past and put them to anything else apart from what they were rated for.
Which in our situation, before you get excited, we have got
You've got some
reserves. So we've got money here, sitting only for what it was for. So
Yeah.
Parks and Rec will be the best example. And if we do have a big spend up or anything, that gets used first, but it's actually a pretty good savings account.
Yeah, so we will not be topping them up going forward, because what we will be doing is creating district-wide reserves. So for argument's sake, if we're talking about swimming pools, we'll be creating a district swimming pool fund rather than a Ranfurly pool, a Roxburgh pool. So moving on to the next one, the reserves. You've got you've got nearly $2 million worth of reserves sitting there. Forget the stuff pretty much on the right. The Maniototo Ward specific reserves, the reserve contribution fund, Maniototo 346. This stuff here, sorry, just bring it over a wee bit. This stuff here, this is all done from subdivision development. So that can be spent in the area on things like parks, reserves, playgrounds, that type of thing. So that's what that's for. The trust fund is, so that was where you got your Otago Power shares. Mostly was in the Otago Power at that time. And the endowment land, so you've got endowment land that is specific to the Maniototo, that it needs to be spent in the Maniototo.
Which is amazing, Naseby.
Yeah. So whatever the endowment was created for, that's where that money's got to go.
Yeah.
So you got $673,000 of that that's really tied down, quite specific to where it can go. So we move back over this side. Don't worry about the general rates, that's 3,000, it's not much worth worrying. Then you've got $1.3 million, and they're all basically rated from the same space. So for argument's sake, if you decided that, let's take the full example that you're talking about, you want to put heat pumps in or upgrade the heating, and it's more than 200 grand, you can actually dip into, take it out of these because they're all funded from the same spot.
Right.
So you do have some money to work with in terms of doing stuff within the area. And as Stu said, what we will do is if things come up within, you know, we maybe want to do the pool, do something in the pool, and the council then has two options. They can either say, yep, let's use that, and say the money says $300,000 worth of work. Let's use that $200,000 there, and the district will contribute the other 100. Right?
Yeah.
So then that's the project done. So that effectively zeroes out. Because what we actually want is we want to get rid of that and get it spent.
What was
Because
this continual milk rate? How did they get so high? Explain to me how.
Well, because when we bought the Centennial Milk Bar,
Yeah.
and then we raised it to repair it and fix it and paint it and do that sort of stuff, so it became a regular price tag or regular cost to the rate part.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll be budgeting for continual maintenance and it might have been like, so that's our, so all of those things you'd argue that we've had there and they've been in our rating system, in a budget effectively. And then when they called the council district-wide funded, stop, they pulled the pin and that's where it sat. It's like, there's a check, but rip it up, they'd all sat there where it was to be. And so if we had the neoprene roof on the Centennial Milk Bar damaged, well, we've been rating for it in advance, so here's a 32,000
so
repairs.
effectively what you've done here for all of those is you had collected, potentially collected rates from ratepayers and you haven't spent them.
Yeah.
Good business.
Probably not, that's not something that we like to do. We don't like rating and then parking it.
Yeah.
And that's always been our problem with grants funding, and we might as well talk about while we're now, is because we can only apply grants, like we had Naseby today.
Yeah.
They come to grants for 4,000, so we had 10 of them, we've got $20,000 or whatever. We can only rate for the amount that's been given out in grants. But along comes a curling rink, and then along comes a hospital, which are $2 million, and we haven't, so a lot of this is now, it's like a savings account or afford, it's, you know, so yeah, I guess what I'm saying is we can't rate for something we're not spending it on.
So getting back to this situation, the second option is for council to say, no, it doesn't fit our plan. We're not going to fund that extra 100K. So then you've got options to say, well, if we use that and use something else within that, we could get that job done. Right? So
Yeah.
that's the type of conversation and discussion that you would have with the council over the use of these reserves. But the council's made a policy effectively that first port of call is on the reserves. If there's stuff that needs to be done, we will use the reserves up first, and then the district will contribute to that.
So once those reserves are gone, we'll start rating, like say.
We will be rating, we're already rating for the pool. Right? So that's going into a,
If it comes out of the district, the rest of it comes out of the district, you see, so if we want to do something at the stadium, and there's no reserves, you go, we want to do another irrigation system and do that, then it comes out of Parks Street budget, Central Target District Council.
Yeah.
Before it was coming out of the Maniototo Community Board.
because otherwise that gets stranded and you never get to use it.
No, yeah.
So, and what you've done is well, not what you've done, but what's happened is that people have been rated for that. And to see $1.3 million sitting there, not being used, it's not right.
Well, that's what would have happened until district-wide funding came along.
So, yeah, there we go, we made it.
Good.
I think you've asked all your questions throughout, at least you got some.
Actually, no, annoyed you,
No, you're good. Look, and I guess the thing is, if you think of something that you want some clarification on, flick me an email, give me a bell, whatever, and I'm more than happy to talk through it and try and answer it. And I do think that we will be having, especially around the rate space, some more workshops around what that might.
I think this is one of the most important. Paul does a very good job, and to be fair, no disrespect to the former staff in this role, it was very hard to understand the finance part. Even the council struggled sometimes to understand the financial part of it, and I think he explains it really well. The important part about it, that $1.3 million is basically a savings account now, that those things that come up, is if it has to be spent, because council will say, no, you use your reserves, we don't, and it's, you talk about irrigation on the park, well, that $300,000 allows such things to happen, and then you go back to council. But the rest, they'll look at it and go, you use your reserves first, but we give you any money. But we're actually about this right funding, but there's money there as well in their long-term budget what we do.
So we really want to be confident of that pretty soon, otherwise he just fishtizing the money towards projects and problems, saying nothing back to the current rates.
Well, the council may not necessarily say
What's the list on that list? We should have got into it.
well,
Otherwise, all our rates are going to
or who says that council say you have to use that reserve? It could be in your long-term plan, the pools come up and it stays there for something.
Is that not what I'm trying to, is that not the right way of thinking it, looking at it?
Oh, if it was me, I'd go council for the money for pools and parks and recreation, because they're part of the council-wide funding, and that's just
I'll
actually
say use that first though.
Oh, well, I'd say use it last.
I think the general rule though is that technically, council should only be rating for what it's going to spend in the following year. And your ratepayer will say, why are you rating me when you've already got 1.3 million, but you've taken off me, but you've not spent it? And yet you still want to rate me more and you're not spending that 1.3. Council has set the policy that, but we have to get rid of these reserves.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair on our community that we've taken the money, but we haven't spent it on what we said we're going to spend it on.
Yeah.
So we do need to spend it. Now, it needs to be spent on things that are worthwhile and beneficial to the community. Clearly, it's not just a piss up at the stadium type thing.
Yeah.
So it has to be something that the council will agree to, because it is reserves. It's council's final decision on that. But like as you've discussed today, there's probably a number of things where things like that could be applied to that would make a lot of sense. And so it really is for the community board and the community to have a think about where would you like that money applied.
I guess the other thing I will add to that with the districtisation has only just started.
Yeah.
So the money going into the reserve pots for whatever is needed is small.
Yeah.
So
what I was saying is, if we've got a wish list on that left-hand line, we've already spent the money in our rates to do it, and we haven't spent it. Now our rate money's going to digitalisation.
No, it won't leave that fund. It can't go.
That's what I'm saying. We're still paying rates though.
Yeah.
So why aren't we actually looking at starting to make projects out of that list? Because you're still paying the same rates.
Yeah.
But then we've got money sitting there, so
But the other side of that
was charged over the other years.
There's things like the Art Deco buildings that came up. No, this has only become a result of the last 6 months of district.
Oh yeah, I'm saying
And earthquake, and there could be parts in that go, well, actually, these buildings and, there's a lot in that. But at the same token, you're paying rates to now a different entity, which is Central Oak District Council. You're still entitled to the same value out of that new entity if it was the Parks and Rec or the pool. Because others will have the same. Vincent have pretty much levelled theirs out, haven't they?
Yeah, they're cleaned out pretty much.
But Cromwell, there's the.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. So our rates are now going to us on their projects, which is fine. I get it.
Yeah, but also the capital, the land sales and stuff, this way.
We don't want 1 million sitting in the bank for 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I guess the other thing though, if you've got a plan, and I think this is where the 3 to 5 minimum sort of looking kicks in. I think that it would be a mistake to rush out and just start doing projects.
Yeah.
But if you can sit down and say, right, as part of this discussion, we need to start thinking long term. We can start using, those reserves don't necessarily have to be used up straight away. If you have a plan that says, in year one, we're gonna do this, in year two, we're gonna do this, in year three, we're gonna do this, and this is how we wanna use those reserves. We can factor that into the LTP, and that will deliver you more potentially, because you'd still be doing all the other stuff that the district's funding that you're paying rates for.
Yeah.
But it's just having that plan and sitting down and thinking, right, what does this area need?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and the worst thing would be, from my life, if you go, oh, there's 1.3 million for straight into a new pool, where actually council would have funded the new pool anyway, that's the rates you're paying, but it might have added more value to the pool structure that was there as far as heating or whatever. And you remember, you still got those buildings that, I'm pretty sure if you went to the council and said, oh, we've got the Centennial Milk Bar, which might have been taken on the divestment list, and you want to do something to it, they go, no, you had reserves there, and now you've got to build and sell it, or rate, or we don't want to know anything about it. So you've got to be really careful that some of the things, yes, you have a wish list, which will still come under, and if you want capital right for your turf, well, that could well come out of land sales in Cromwell, because, or land sales or some other things, or gold mining royalties or other funds. So that's the thing. If you go back to, you want to repair the Petero Hall and go back to the Cromwell Community Board and Council, sorry, mate. You know, and so, but the categories is in there is for the reasons where you have cost of irrigation and parks and rec or stadium. You know, so that particularly, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But you're still.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time, and members. I hope
Thank
you
you.
found it enjoyable.
Very good.
Very enjoyable. Third, sixth time I've heard this one.
And you can hear it from very good time.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's breezy out there, isn't it?
Well,
The